Hi, this is Russell Anders, and you are listening to Pop Culture Addicts.
Hello, guys, and welcome back to Pop Culture Addicts. I am Tim. I am your host, and this is your reminder that you are watching and or listening to a show that is made by this nerd for all you nerds. So I'm glad you could stop by today. Now, our guest today is an author who uses writing to escape the realities of this world. You'll find his work on bestseller lists for cyberpunk science fiction. I almost said cyberpunk cyber fiction, but they're probably pretty similar anyway. Now, at other times, you'll find pictures of him on his website and his Instagram page spending time with his dogs, which I think is a time well spent and honored tradition. Now, in our chat, we're going to discuss his origin story, the positives of escapism, the fandoms that fuel them, and even a little bit about the writing process that he employs. Now, if you're new here, please click that like and follow button. I'd hate for you to miss out on future guests. At this time, let's welcome Russell Anders to the show. Welcome to the show, Russell.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So glad that I get a chance to talk with you. I got a chance to see your resume, your work that you've done, and I thought, boy, and some of the other things I'd seen that you've done, I thought, man, he'd be a really fun conversation. So no pressure. You don't have a lot to live up to, but I expect it to be fun. No, I'm just kidding. It's
you beat me to it.
Yes. All right. So very first question for you, Russell, out the gate is the same question I like to ask everybody as long as it's been their first time on the show. And that's about their origin story. Now, I do this for a couple reasons. As I told you pre-show, I like to know what makes people tick, why they do what they do. What about writing spoke to you? And then secondly, I'm a giant nerd, and nerds love a good origin story for their heroes. And you are the hero of today's story. So, in the story of Russell Anders, what made you say, I want to be an author?
I think the very first thing that that put me down that path was my mother. This happened before I have memory, so this is strictly hearsay based on her telling. But apparently, when I was really, really young, she would read to me before I'd go to bed, and I started apparently to be a little impatient with things. So as she's reading the book, I would start cutting her off and say, "And then what happens? And then what happens?" And Mom, saint that she is, instead of telling that little annoying kid to shut up and listen, started instead saying, "Well, I don't know. Why don't you tell me?" And I can only imagine, based on the stories that I did tell as a young kid, she was incredibly indulgent and patient, because I'm sure that whatever it was that I came up with was about 17 times as long as the book she was reading me. But that was the beginning of it. She started me telling my own stories, giving me a launching point, and then I just started to do it. So long before I had any concept of what writing really was, storytelling became, the thing that I did. And I never got away from it. Whether I was writing or not, I was always involved in story. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was 6 years old. Nice. And it was, it wasn't the minifig combat part that really did it for me. It was the adventure and the storytelling and all of that. It was, and that was, that's a hobby I still have today. So yeah, I got infused with the idea of telling stories before I have memory. And it was just something that grew with me and grew and matured with me also.
Okay. Two things I love about that story. Number one, I love that your mom fueled your imagination. That's fantastic. I love seeing that, especially in today, in the modern age of screens, and you see kids with their faces consistently buried in an iPad or a cell phone or something along those lines. I think it's awesome when I see parents out and about with their kids, not a digital device in hand, and they're doing things to actively fuel their imagination. And so kudos to your mom for that. Yeah. And then, possible sainthood for your mother. I've had my wife and I have 3 children, and at the ages of 3 to 5, the questions are limitless to begin with. And then there's the and then she's feeding it to you with with the what ifs or what happens next. So yeah, I could see sainthood on her list. Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah. There was a reason why the first book that I wrote was dedicated to my parents. And I didn't just say for my parents. It was each of them got a line because
love it.
they each in their own way definitely earned it.
Love it. Okay. So I was not aware of your D&D background, so now I have to ask, did you spend more time in your formative years as a character, or were you the GM? Were you spinning the story?
So for a good long while, my group was incredibly small. It was me and my next door neighbor Jake, and so we would swap. It was a lot of solo play,
Sure.
and it was more or less 50-50. All right, it's my turn to play the character, and then we'll flip it back and forth. Over time, I naturally found myself preferring to be in the big chair. I like to be behind the screen. I don't necessarily need to be telling my story. I don't like railroading my characters, but I do like to be the one who facilitates the emergence of the character's story. I like that these days better than I like playing a character. Although
Okay.
one of my friends tells me that it's probably because I have a lot of opinions as to what makes a good game. So I prefer to play my own games.
Fair. I'm never allowing you to meet my GM. So on here on the podcast once a month, we play, just because of trying to facilitate everybody's schedules. We only are able to get together once a month, but we've been playing a once a month game for the last, we've got 42, almost 4 years. I think we've got 44 episodes in. So of us playing a Star Wars RPG, because we're like, well, that would be fun. And because I had never played D&D before. This was my entry into, and I'm a massive Star Wars fan. So everybody that I was with, they're like, well, why don't we play Star Wars? There's a great Star Wars version campaign, and we'll play that because the universe, you're familiar with it. It'll make it easier for you to be able to jump in and play. And I was like, okay. I had always wanted to, but growing up, none of my friends were really wanted to play D&D or anything like it. So this was a good opportunity for me, and I've been enjoying the heck out of it. I mean, other than the fact that my GM killed my first character, he said it was a rite of passage that had to happen.
He sounds old school.
Yeah, I don't know that I believe him, but yeah, he'd be very proud to know that I'm mocking him publicly online, though.
So I just recently wrapped up a campaign of a role-playing game that I wrote that was based on my novel. And and it was something that a friend of mine who's in marketing professionally convinced me to do. It wasn't something I wanted to, but he insisted there would be some good opportunities for cross promotion and things like that. So I wound up getting a small group together and ran about a 6-month play test. Because you can write the rules, but how they read versus how they play at the table may not have much in common. I was actually very happy to see that with just some small tweaks, it did everything I wanted it to. It recreated the experience of the book brilliantly. And that's why I bring it up is I don't think you need to kill a character as a rite of passage. My players had plenty of opportunities where I think they would say that what I put them through was worse than killing their characters.
Yeah, you're definitely not allowed to talk with John.
they loved me for it.
All right. Well, since you brought up your book, let's talk a little bit about your book, which is entitled, and I'm probably going to mess this up, but you can fix it for me if I do, Daemones ex Machina. Did I get it right?
You got it.
Yay! All right. All that time of practicing and making sure I got it. Look at me go. All right. Yeah, Daemones ex Machina. Now, your book, it's ranking in cyberpunk science fiction as a bestseller, and it shows that you have an appreciation for the nerdiverses around us. So I want you to do two things here, if you would, please. First, I'll ask this part of the question first, then I'll come back in with the second one after we've answered this. But first off, I'm hoping what you'll do is tell the listeners and viewers about your book. Give them a sense of what's happening and what they can look forward to, and where they can find it.
Okay, let me take that in two different directions. So one, just the log line, the very, very short summary is it's about a small band of paramilitary corporate operatives who get burned on a job and wind up going on the run as they're being hunted by their sponsoring corporation. The thing that allows them to escape and to buy time when it's just these three people without any larger resources against a monolithic corporation is the fact that they make bargains. They make infernal bargains. So each of them has a demonic companion that gives them magical power and allows them to break the rules. Except that as they are trying to figure out why they were burned and what was going on, they begin to discover that the deals that they made are beginning to have wider implications than what they thought when they made the deals with their backs against the walls.
Okay.
So that's the basic setup. Thematically, I wrote it in a very classic cyberpunk way, but I sort of harken back to the cyberpunk of the 80s, the original cyberpunk, as opposed to post cyberpunk or whatever came after post cyberpunk is. The modern cyberpunk is much more, makes perfect sense, is much more interested in the idea of personhood. What is life, right? Is artificial intelligence alive? What constitutes consciousness? Things like that. Older cyberpunk was much more, I felt anyway, interested in the implications of technology that was advanced beyond what we had just a little bit, things that we could imagine being created, even if we don't have them yet. But they didn't improve the quality of life for people. So there was more capacity, but there was not improved quality. And
right, yeah.
From a setting perspective, it was very interested in things that really aren't fiction at all anymore. It's monolithic corporations, massive wealth gap, rampant financialization. And these were things that really that appealed to me more than the philosophical questions of what is alive. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just didn't stick in my filter. So this is more like a callback to books like Neuromancer with that supernatural twist, and the magic is there not to be cool, though I hope it is, but it's there to stand as a contrast to the technology, where technology files the serial numbers off of everything, right? And we're not people anymore. We're cogs in the system, in the machine, and ideally we're all interchangeable and we are human resources.
Okay.
But the devil doesn't deal with that. The devil doesn't batch print contracts that are generic and then just passes them out to everybody to put their signature on. They are your name, your blood, your terms as they are negotiated. Every single one of them is individual. So it restores personhood, even if it restores personhood to the story. It's not a benevolent force by any stretch, but I wanted to put that element of humanity back into the story.
Okay, excellent. All right, and real quick for our listeners, if you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to click that like and follow button. All right, Russell, second half of that question. Now, there's evidence of, you're talking about the influence of the older cyberpunk from the 80s. What are some fandoms that continue to shape your view of fandoms and your own writing style today?
So interestingly, some of the stuff the fandoms that I like to follow aren't actually about writing so much. I find actually discussions on specifically story first role-playing games and role-playing game design is, in some ways, it's like richer material that dealing with the idea of how to tell a story. I find that a lot of fandoms about specific properties. I mean, look, I'm a brown coat, you know. Yes, but you know, people can sometimes get caught up in some of the minutia about that, and then they're not really talking about the story. So, but when people are talking about role-playing games and role-playing game design specifically, it's about how do we create mechanisms by which story can emerge. And while that's not really writing craft, I do like that. I think it tickles the same area of my brain. And I like the thought processes that people bring to those discussions.
Okay. So you're a brown coat. That's awesome. Love that. I have to ask now, are you excited about the animation continuation?
I'm torn. You know, it was, I felt like it was a damn near perfect show, but, and I'm very happy to hear that it's in the hands of the original cast, the people who love it. I'm always skeptical when a line that I love gets resurrected, because there are so many times when it gets taken from whatever special thing it was and just gets hollowed out into here's product slop, but it kind of, you know, wears the same branding, so give us money. And some of them are so bad that they actually retroactively strip away some of the enjoyment of the original for me. And so sure. I really hope that doesn't happen, but I'm not going to sit here and be a complete curmudgeon. Maybe it'll be awesome. I will watch.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I am very excited about it. And my excitement only gained speed when I realized that it was going to be the entirety of the original cast. And that meant Wash was, you know, and I always say this jokingly, but you know, it's been canceled for years and the movie's been out for years, the Serenity movie. But that means Wash is alive. So,
right.
So that I'm like, all right, I can watch that. Because not having Alan Tudyk in anything Firefly related just seems really in bad form, because Wash is such a great character.
And if you think about it, the show would be entirely too dark without him. Everybody else is so grim and serious. He needs to be there, or it just becomes kind of a dirge.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with that 100%. I love, you know, when I first started watching, because I hadn't watched it for years, and you know, and I kind of refused to watch it at the outset, because I was like, it's only 14 episodes. How good can it be? They got canceled in the first season. How good could it be? And so I, for no other reason than that, I had no knowledge of the show. I had no knowledge of, you know, a bunch of things on it. And one of my friends was like, look, you're a huge Nathan Fillion fan. I can't believe you haven't watched this. Just watch it. And we were on vacation probably about 10 years ago. And I sat down and watched the whole thing. And I was like, yeah, okay. I'm pissed at Fox. They're stupid. Okay. You know, but yeah. All right. Well, cool. All right. Now you talked when you were answering the question in my pre-Firefly rant there. It's easy for me to go off the rails here and talk about other things. I try to keep myself on the straight and narrow. Doesn't always work. But we were talking a little bit about the process of your writing a little bit. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Sure. Now, I'm always interested in how you authors build your stories. Now, for some of the authors that I've talked to, they like to focus on the world first, because they feel that if they have a solid world, you know, the universe for their characters to fit in, that everything will flesh out from there. And others do the exact opposite, character first, and then flesh out the universe around them. Do you have a particular process for you in your writing style, or does it vary from project to project?
Once I have a solid idea, I have a somewhat rigid process, only because I tried to do the whole pantser thing. And the first book I wrote turned out to be something like 600,000 words. And I was just because I didn't know, I had no idea where to go. So, but I was like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write 5 pages a day. And I did. And the story wandered all over the place because I had no idea where it was going. So it turns out I'm somebody who needs a roadmap. So I start. So I actually build the outline and everything, but how I get the ideas. So I kind of unintentionally started to subscribe to a process that I heard described beautifully by Warren Ellis. He talks about, and if you've not read anything by him, I highly recommend it. He does a lot of comic book work, but he also redid G.I. Joe a while ago and made it a grown-up cartoon, and it was awesome. Ellis talks about how what he does is regularly binges on media, all kinds of stuff, books, movies, news. He says he just takes all this and he dumps it into his subconscious, and he lets all of that just swirl. He says, and eventually all of these random things will start to congeal and ferment, and you apply just a little bit of creative heat and something binds, and it's a unique combination of stuff, and it bubbles up and it's a hook. It's not the entire thing, but it's a starting point. And so I have found that to be very much the case for me as well. And that starting point might be a character or a situation, or it could be an idea for a world. At some point, I will build out both of those things before I really sit down and start to write. I like to have an A story and a B story in what I write. The A story is that big meta setting. What is the what's the big thing? But the B story is what's going on inside the characters. And I feel like you have to have both.
Okay. No, I like that. And it's funny to me because, I remember the first time I found out the phrase pantser, and I was like, what does, pantsing somebody have to do with writing a story? And then it got explained to me. I'm like, oh, flying by the seat of your pants. Got it. Okay. That was a bit of or a little bit of a red face moment of going, oh, that's what that means. Oh, okay now. But it's amazing to me that, when I talk to guys who are pantsers, they can't fathom the outline way. Because they feel like it dampers their creativity. Now you're following an outline. Do you feel that it in any way inhibits your writing or your creativity, or do you feel that it adds to it because you have an idea of where you're heading?
Yeah, I when I first started to do it, I was very concerned about that exact thing. As it turns out, when I embraced the idea that writing is an iterative process, that what I wind up with may have only tangential similarity to what I planned, I find that the process of writing, even though I have an outline, is still one of continuous discovery. And so it's a guide. It keeps me from wandering way far afield, and then I wind up writing 600 pages that are absolutely useless. But at the same time, there are lots of times, especially once I really get going, the characters begin to take over the scenes for me. Those are the best times. Things begin to just happen that I didn't plan for. And so I won't say that I completely deviate right off the outline, but if the outline is plotting me this course where I'm just taking the interstate right across the country, the actual writing process will have me winding my way through a whole lot of back roads. I'm still ultimately going to wind up somewhere pretty close, I think, to where I started. But the way that I get there is still, even though I had that map, different from what I had in mind. So only because I don't treat it like a straitjacket. I just treat it like a guide. So I never sit down and say, well, I have no idea what's going to happen now.
Okay. That's fair. That's a good answer. All right. Now, I want to ask you about a quote that I saw of yours online. Um, and this was either in a quote or a blurb, so you can clarify. It said that you write about this world by writing about other worlds. Now, I took that as a reference to escapism, which in my mind is always a good thing. So, in your opinion, what are the benefits of escapism, and is that what you meant by that statement?
I think, well, for starters, I think the benefits of escapism are, I mean, everybody needs a break now and again. I have a friend of mine who has a quote I love. He says, "Life is a full contact sport." It absolutely is, and we don't get
For
padding.
sure.
So
No, we
you
do
know,
not.
so being able to take a break from that and just go somewhere else, to not just. So I personally cannot stand when someone tells me, "Oh, go watch this movie. It's fun if you just turn off your brain." If I have to, flatline my brain scan in order to enjoy something, I don't want to make time for it. But show me something different. Show me possibilities, even if they're impossible. Show me some possible dreams. I think that like we were talking about D&D. I routinely, like, I don't actually like the game D&D anymore. I like other games, and one of the things I will continually say is first level sucks. I don't want to play somebody in a fantasy game who's less capable than I am in real life. And that's, and in D&D you kind of are for the first 3 or 4 levels. Like, I don't want to spend like 3 months playing a guy who sucks. If I'm going to go and be, a fantasy hero, I want to be a fantasy hero. Right. So, I think that's a really safe, productive way of getting reprieve from the drudgery. So I think that there is a tremendous amount of benefit to the right kind of escapism.
Yes.
That's not entirely how I use writing. When I say that I write about this world by writing about others, for me, it's a bit cathartic. It's not escapist, because usually the seed of my world, and I write dystopian settings, so I'm picking something about this world that bothers me, except that I'm not going to sit there and write 400 pages of essays lecturing people, because nobody wants to hear that. I wouldn't want to hear that. So instead, I try to give messages through the narrative. And instead of saying, this is bad, show why this is bad. Maybe show where it might be going, a warning tale, something like that. Very much like 1984. George Orwell, I think he actually did write certain essays that actually said authoritarian and bad. But, 1984 shows it. And I think that's why people remember that and not his essays. And that's more or less what I tried to do. It's less of an escape for me, and more of it's a reframing, because I turn it into a creative exercise. So it's not quite so bothersome. It becomes a little bit fun, because I'm changing things. It's inspired by the real world, but I'm still somewhere else, and that's fun, even though I'm writing about some awful stuff.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's talk about one of the ways that I saw that you had some escapism, and I was doing some slight digital stalking. Some would call it research, but whatever. Sure. I was hanging out on your website, and I was checking out your Instagram, and I was very much enjoying the pictures and videos of you with your dogs. So we here at Pop Culture Addicts are very pet friendly. So I was hoping that you would tell me about your furry little friends.
Certainly. I have had dogs since I was 13 years old. I remember when we finally, as a family, moved from an apartment to a house. We were there for about a year, and my sister and I went to my father and said, "Dad, you said when we got a house we could get a dog." And he said, "That's true. I did say that." Okay. So he got this brick of a book. I mean, you could kill someone with it. And he dropped it in front of me, and he says, "It's your job to do your research and come back to me with the breed and why. He says, I said, okay. So I start flipping through, and little 12-year-old me realizes that as I go through the pages, they're getting bigger. So I just flipped to the back of the book, and I chose an English Mastiff because it was huge. But, then I did all the reading and manufactured reasons that would sound better to him. But really, it was just because they were the most gigantic dog in the book. And so we got an English Mastiff, and he was amazing. He was such a good dog that he basically turned my whole family into a Mastiff family for life. So I have had now, since then, I've had 6 over the course of my life. I currently live with 2, Zigguard and Rig, and they would be behind me, probably wrestling, because as soon as I stop paying attention to them, they start making a lot of noise, which is why I've locked them out of this room, because they're both about 200 pounds, and when they start to wrestle, there's a lot of noise.
There's a lot of noise, yes. Yeah, I was looking at your dogs, and I was like, that looks like a Mastiff. I've only met one Mastiff, a full-blood Mastiff in real life, I think once. And that dog at 9 months old, wasn't even full grown, was one of the biggest dogs I had ever seen in my life. And I was like, how many years old is your dog? And they're like, oh, he's not even a year old yet. And he just these massive paws. And I was just like, oh God. I'm like, I feel so sorry for your backyard.
Okay, so that I was gonna say I have nothing bad to say about them. That is, I often tell people, I said, if you're really upset with somebody and you want to drop a big flaming bag of poop on their doorstep, I can get you 40 pounds inside of a week.
Yeah, that I am sure. That I would think that would take very little time to bring to fruition. Yeah. All right. Yeah, see, we run with much smaller dogs over here. I've got a corgi. So yeah, we have a little corgi. Her name is Toast.
Cute.
She's an interesting little thing. Most judgmental dog I've ever had in my life. Oh man. Just the judgy eyes. If she doesn't like what you're doing, she'll put her ears back and she'll turn and look at you. She'll turn the head slowly even. She's a sarcastic little thing. So she's my little diva, but she's my buddy. So all right. Well, you've answered all of my questions thus far admirably, but I have one question left for you, and I call it my silly question. And we call it that, even though it's not all that silly, because my live show co-host, Kathleen, was out and about with her daughter, and somebody asked her daughter this question, and Kathleen thought, well, that's rude. You should never age out of this question. You should always be able to be asked this. So that question is, Russell Landers, what's your favorite dinosaur?
I was huge into dinosaurs when I was a kid. So this is actually a hard question for me because obviously there's the T-Rex, but I was a big, big fan of the Ankylosaurus,
okay.
The Triceratops, and I loved the idea that the Brachiosaurus had 2 brains. So I think right now I will lean towards the Triceratops.
That is a fantastic answer. Mostly because it's my favorite dinosaur, but
there you go.
Yeah, so kudos to you for picking the coolest one, obviously. All right. Well, Russell, thank you so much for being on Pop Culture Addicts today. Where can our listeners and viewers go to find out more about you, your work, and whatever else you've got coming up?
Certainly. So I'm on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Russell Anders. I'm also on Instagram, Russell Anders Author. My website, which is probably the best place to go to find out anything new coming, is russellandersbooks.com. I'm in the process of rebuilding that right now. So there'll be some announcements. I have the audiobook version of my novel coming soon, so there'll be a link there. There's also, if you are interested in hearing how this book translated into a role-playing game, you can search on either Spotify or Audible for Daemones Ex Machina, and there is a actual play podcast. We wrapped the campaign. Not all of the episodes are out yet, but they're coming. So you can hear how other people had their own experience in a very similar story setup. It was kind of a wild ride.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure to get links for not only your socials and your website, but also for the podcast, and of course where they can get your books. Now, I'm assuming they can also get your books through your website as well, correct?
Correct. I mean, it'll bring you to Amazon, but yes, you can do that.
Okay. Very good. We'll make sure we get some links in there so that people can go see what you got going on and make sure they get check out what you're doing. All right, guys. Thank you for watching and or listening today. Be sure to go follow Russell Anders, not only on his social media, but check out his website. And we're going to have some links, like I said, down below in the show notes for you guys to be able to do just that. Now, if you have enjoyed what you've heard today, be sure to click that like and follow button. And if you're a pop culture addict like the rest of us nerds, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast listening platform, or just leave us a comment here on this episode. Tell us what you like. Tell us why Triceratops are the coolest of all the dinosaurs, and other fun stuff like that. So until next time, and on behalf of Russell Anders, thank you for watching and or listening, and may the force be with you as you continue to live long and prosper. Goodbye. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Pop Culture Addicts. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@pcapod.com.